Americans are durable. We take pride in hard work and high quality. American Giant makes durable quality clothing right here in the USA because what we wear reflects who we are. When you buy American Giant, you're not just wearing the best clothes money can buy. You're helping keep jobs and pride in your own backyard. Premium clothing built to last decades, like it should. Get 20% off your first order at American-Giant.com with code RightHere24.
Welcome to the 5 o'clock show. It's time for Common Sense. Now, it's Katz and Cosby with John Katzimatidis and Rita Cosby, standing for truth, justice, and the American way, bringing common sense to the world. Now, here's John Katzimatidis and Rita Cosby. Breaking news, WABC.
And welcome to Katz and Cosby. We have an enormous breaking news day. President Donald Trump is going to be calling us in just a moment. We have a big exclusive. This is going to be a fantastic show, John.
And it's, I got a lot of things to talk to the president about.
Yeah, I can't wait. There's so much between these comments
and in
from
the studio
Kelly
listening, and we're going to have a discussion afterwards. Judge Weinberg, GOP chairman of New York State, Ed Cox, and Governor David Paterson. And we're going to have a good discussion right after the interview.
And guess who's calling in? We're going to be talking to Kevin McCarthy, the former Speaker of the House, is going to be joining us.
And he's supposed to be listening to the interview and giving his comments too.
And also, we'll be talking to General Kellogg, of course, who was in the National Security Administration. Obviously, they're under Trump. This is a biggie, John. And everybody, now let's go. I understand we've got President Trump on the phone. And everybody, by the way, this interview with Donald J. Trump is sponsored by Thor Metals Group. It's an American-owned and customer-approved precious metals provider. Thor Metals Group specializes in investment-grade gold, silver, and platinum, and the precious metals IRA to protect your portfolio from chaos.
Breaking news, WABC.
And joining us now here on Katz and Cosby is the 45th President of the United States, who wants to be the 47th President, Donald Trump. Mr. President, let's get right to it. Do you think we're going to see a trifecta on election night? A Republican president, a Republican Senate, a Republican House? And how important is early voting? Because people are coming out in record numbers.
Well, it is important. It's most important to vote, but it is important to have, and it takes a lot of the risk out of bad weather and other things when you get back to the famous Tuesday where Republicans like to be. And the Republicans have really stepped up, and they are early voting. And I think it's very possible. I think we're doing very well in the Senate. I think the House is going to surprise you. I've helped a lot of the House members with calls and endorsements and things. I think the House is going to surprise you greatly. And you're seeing the numbers for president right now, and the numbers are, I would say, if you took highest expectation and doubled it, that's where we are.
This morning, Michael Whatley was on Maria Bartiromo, and he was excellent, and he talked about that the Republicans are very well prepared to have people at every polling site to make sure there's no bad voting going on.
Well, that's true. I mean, we've spent a lot. I took Michael Whatley from North Carolina, which I won twice, and we had no cheating there, and we had a lot of cheating in other places, John, a lot. And I didn't use those people. I took the people that were able to. We don't need the votes. We need to make sure that the ballots are counted properly and that new ballots aren't added at bad times. And I took the man that was best at that. I put him in charge, and he's doing a fantastic job along with Laura.
The most important things that the American people care about is what's going on in America first. Regardless, even if a million people are dying in Africa, they care about America first. And the most important issues, I believe, is the border. If Harris gets elected, people are still going to, the migrants are still going to be coming through.
She will open the border. It won't even, like she's pretending it's, closing now. but she forgot to turn off the airplanes. 400,000 people come in by airplane. Can you believe it?
Wow.
That's when people really began to say, hey, this is really bad. Because, for 2 years, they didn't know about the airplanes. They only found out the airplanes. They started looking up, and they said, how come all those planes are flying over us? The big planes, loaded up with migrants. These people are sick. And, I watched last night that CNN town hall. This woman does not have what it takes. It was a disaster. It was a disaster. I mean, to have her lead us for 4 years, she's just a vessel for the party. Look, the party is a very vicious party, the Democrat Party. It doesn't have a president, and it didn't have with Biden. It calls all the shots. They are extraordinary. They're very smart, but they are they're a very corrupt party, and they need people like that. They are perfect people. Those people will do whatever it tells them to do. But they're vessels. All they are is vessels. I watched her last night. She could not answer the simplest question. It was amazing, actually.
Well, would you hire her to run one of your companies if you were still in the corporate business?
Well, nobody would. I mean, unless they want to lose it, nobody would. She can't run she can't run anything, but she'll do what the party tells her. Look, the party is vicious but smart, and they ended up with Biden. They didn't want Biden. They wanted Bernie Sanders. They ended up with Biden, and they tell him what to do. And look, they took his presidency away. This has never happened before in our country's history. They went into him. They said, you had a bad debate. Your numbers are down. And we want you out. And he said no for about 24 hours. And then they threatened him with you-know-what. And he got out. And he hates her so much because she was, helping because she wanted to be in this position. And then they went politically correct. So they took their weakest candidate, which is her. They have, much stronger candidates than hers, but they took their weakest candidate, which is her. And they said, you're going to run. They didn't have the guts to put their best candidates in because they didn't, they wanted to be politically correct with her. She was vice president, even though she got no votes. Think of it. Biden got 14 million votes. She got no votes. She was the first one out. She lost. She quit before Iowa. She never made, most of them made it to Iowa. She never made it, and they picked her. And I always say, they're the threat to democracy. They always do this threat to democracy. They don't believe it. It's just a soundbite. With me, they don't believe that. I'm a threat to democracy. They're the threat. They weaponize government. The things they do are horrible. Even the way they took him out of office, they say, Joe, you're out. We're making a change. He said, you can't do that. They said, yes, we can. And it was Schumer and Pelosi, largely, in case you have any questions. Crazy Nancy.
Well, it was a coup on the United States of America that nobody's calling it a coup yet.
I don't think you need the coup. They basically stole the elections. It's almost better. Half the people don't know what a coup means. We think they do. They don't. But they basically just said, you're out. They stole the election from the president, and he's angry about it, and he knows it. And it's blown up in his face.
Yeah, President Trump, she really had some strong language last night. I mean, it was stunning at the town hall. She called you a fascist. What do you say to that? And also, what do you also say to, General John Kelly and Mark Milley and some of these others? Is that like the sort of the 51 intel agents, so-called, remember from years ago? With some of this vitriol, it seems like they're trying to throw everything against you to take attention from their lack of message.
So I fire a lot of people when they don't do a good job. When you fire people or let them know they're no good, like when John fires somebody who's running his stores and and when they call that person will always say bad things about you. And I fired people many ways. I've gone the nice way, take your time, have lunch, talk about it, fire them. And I fired people like, you're fired, get out. It doesn't matter. When you fire people, they never say well, especially me, because with most people, when they fire people, nobody cares. They're not going to go. With me, if I fire somebody, they've got every newspaper in the world talking to him to see if they can get him to say something bad. John Kelly was a stupid person. He was a stiff. He had no anything. He had very little. He had two things. he was tough, but ultimately became a marshmallow. At the end of his time, I fired him. He sat in his office, and he was as weak as anybody I've ever seen. But he was a bully, and bullies are that way. He was a nasty bully, and I realized I didn't like him, pretty quickly and was stopping paying attention. But he was a bully who made up stories, and I saw him lying when he was in the administration. I thought it was really amazing. I have so much stuff on the guy, but I don't want to waste a lot of time with that. But John Kelly was a man of rather low intelligence who was a tough guy who became a marshmallow. At the end, the guy couldn't even talk. The other stuff is, like a guy like Jesper. Jesper was a weak guy. I called him Jesper because he said yes to everything. His real name is Esper. He was a very weak person, weak and ineffective. He was recommended by a man who I liked, but he gave me a bad recommendation with Jesper. He was like a woke guy. But he wasn't. And many of these people don't know me very well. They really don't know me very well. I have guys all the time that go on and they say they're telling about Trump, but I've never even met him, or maybe they were in a room or something with me for a couple of minutes. Remember this, and Mattis also was he had this reputation of, first of all, his actual nickname was Chaos, and I changed it. I said Mad Dog or whatever I changed, because I said, that's a bad name to have the name Chaos. Is that really your
Trump,
name? I said,
President Trump. It happens to everybody. Any businessman that fires anybody is going to get that reaction.
Right.
And
you've had it many times.
I've had it many times. Every businessman, no matter who the CEO of companies are, when they do that, it happens to, and that's the way it is. Now, the other important item.
But let me just finish on Mattis. Mattis was just a guy who wouldn't get it done, and Milley was a total dope. Milley was the one that said, leave them all of our equipment in Afghanistan. He told me that. I was getting out of Afghanistan. I was the one that planned it. It was beautiful, but we're going to take the military out last. They took the military out first. That immediately killed everything. You can't do it. I didn't have one soldier killed in Afghanistan for 18 months. There was nothing like it. I dealt with Abdul, the head of the Taliban. But they left all the equipment. And Milley told that to me, sir, we should leave the equipment behind. I said, why would you do that? You mean you'd leave a $150 million brand new jet fighter behind? Yes, sir, it's cheaper. And then I realized he was an idiot. He was a very stupid guy.
That's very dumb.
What he did with China, John,
yes.
What he did with China.
He gave him all that. They gave him all that product. He gave him all those military things and gave him the base.
No, what he did, number one, they gave him the base. But what he did worse than giving him the base, because I was keeping the base. It's called Bagram.
Yes.
I was keeping because it was 1 hour away from where China makes it. No, but he would talk to China about things. What he did with China is, very dangerous. Look, Milley was a dummy. And Milley should have been fired after Afghanistan. Milley and the whole group, everybody should have been fired after Afghanistan. But, Rita, one thing. So I'm glad John did mention that. When we fire people, now the one slight advantage that John has is he's just slightly less famous than me, so people care a little bit less.
That's why I bought the radio station.
Yeah, right. He's become famous. That's true. He's become famous. It's a good station, too. Let me tell you, people listen to that. People listen to that sucker. I want to tell you, they like it. And you're having a good time.
Yes.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great.
The same way you had a good time on television. I see you're better looking, so you could do television. I could do only radio.
You have a face for radio, John?
That's what I got. Two more questions.
You're doing good.
Two more questions. Are we on the eve of destruction if Harris becomes president and Israel attacks Iran again? Are we on the eve of destruction?
If we listen to Harris and Biden, and Biden's been wrong on this stuff. We don't have to say it. Everybody knows.
40 years.
For 50 years, everything he's ever said is wrong. And he was wrong here. He's wrong on everything. If you would be genius, if you would have taken Biden's, whatever his policy, and gone the exact opposite, you would have been the greatest in history, okay? He's been wrong on everything. If you have her as your president, we are in for a catastrophe. There's no way. I know them all. I know all the players. President Xi, Putin, every one of them. Kim Jong-un. If she becomes the president, this country is in real trouble. Real trouble. First of all, we'll have a depression, an economic 1929 style depression, but we'll end up in a third world war. The woman is incompetent. I watched her last night. All she can do is talk about Trump. I mean, whenever a question, well, I think Trump is a dictator. Now, John knows me a long time. I think you could set the audience straight, John. I'm not a dictator.
No.
Yeah, dictator. It's just incredible. This is their new thing. Every week they have a new plan because it hasn't worked. But here's the good news. The numbers are coming in at levels that nobody's ever seen before. I think you agree with that, John.
Absolutely. People,
in fact, they say,
common sense Democrats. I'm after common sense Democrats all the time.
Right.
Common sense
Right.
Democrats, I tell them, close your eyes, vote for President Trump because that's the right way to go.
Yeah, well, that's the right way to go, and we'll have a great country. We're going to have a great 4 years, and you're going to be happy, and everybody's going to be happy. The other way, John, I'm telling you, we'll be in World War III. We'll be in World War III plus.
That's what I'm afraid of.
Have a double.
That's what I'm afraid of, that something is going to happen. And remember the Goldwater commercial where the atomic bomb was going off? Well, that could happen in the Mideast and plunge everybody else into a world war with atomic bombs going off.
It could happen here, John. It could even happen here. Remember that. So,
one last question. The other big problem, our mutual friend Bob Morgenthau will be turning in his grave right now on the rule of law in our country. There is no rule of law. You got political appointees ordering around the FBI, ordering around the border control people, and they're not able, 99.9% of border control people and the FBI are loyal Americans. They love America. Meanwhile, you have political appointees telling them what to do.
Absolutely. You have great people in both offices. The FBI is great, but your top people, boy, oh boy, what's happened to the FBI? And then when you take a look, incredibly, Border Patrol is great. They gave me an endorsement the other day like you've never seen. He's the greatest president of our lifetime. I said, you couldn't do longer? But, some are young. I didn't like that. But they gave me the strongest endorsement. And I never saw this before. While they were endorsing me, they said, she's the worst ever. You can't allow her to do this. Do you know that in 4 years she never called them, not once, and she was in charge of the border? She never even called them once. And it's, look, we're going to have a great border. We're going to have a great economy. We're going to have a great everything. All we have to do is finish this thing off. We're leading in every state. We're not doing badly in one state. I think every state we're leading in.
I hope you take 49 states like President Reagan. Now, one last thing I'm going to go to Rita is Jesus Christ, I forgot what I was going to say. See? Rita, you go. Go ahead.
Be careful, they'll call you cognitively impaired.
Yes, I am impaired. Don't forget, I'm a year younger than you.
Both of you are sharp as a tack. I can vouch for that.
Let me tell you, you are the least cognitively impaired person I think I've ever met.
Yeah.
But anyway, so
I agree.
Think of it later. Go ahead.
Yep. President Trump.
He's a very sharp guy.
He is. Both of you guys are. Are you kidding me? Mr. President, as you're talking about the border, what is your message? We talked about, John so aptly sort of used the word eve of destruction about sort of what's happening internationally. Domestically, what could America look like if it continues to have this open border policy that we have seen? And also,
well, we can't have it. It's not sustainable. It has to be shut immediately, and you have to let people in, but they have to come in legal. And you have to get the killers, the murderers, and the mentally deranged. You have to get them out, and we should throw Jack Smith out with them, the mentally deranged people. Jack Smith should be considered mentally deranged, and he should be thrown out of the country.
I remembered. My God,
came back.
It takes it a little. If whoever called the shot on letting in 13,000 murderers, and a lot of them are in New York, allowing 13,000 murderers to enter the United States of America and prey on the American people, would you call that treason?
Well, the one who called the shot is her, because she was in charge of the border. So she called the shot. And Biden was sleeping half the time, so I don't know. It's almost hard.
So somebody's
That guy's the
guilty
worst
then.
president.
Somebody's guilty.
That guy is the worst president we've ever had. But you'd really say it starts at the top. Now, Mayorkas is ultimately responsible. But the one that really is the one that said this is the way we want to do it is going to be Biden and her and Kamala. But she never made one phone call. I was with the Border Patrol when they endorsed me. They gave me a great endorsement. But I was with them. I said, let me ask you, does she ever speak to you? Does she ever call? No. Has she called you many times during, I forget how many times? They said she's never called us once in 3.5 years.
Wow.
Can you believe it?
Wow. I saw recently that you were asked about this idea of using government funds, Mr. President, as reparations to victims of migrant crime, because sadly, there have been a lot of them. We've seen a lot of these horrible high-profile cases, and so many of the family members are praying that you get into office.
I love the idea of helping them.
Yeah, explain how would that work? Would that be U.S. government? Could you even go after other governments?
I mean, when you take a look at Lake and Riley and the family, I could name 15. I know a lot of the people. I met a lot of the families. I felt I had an obligation to do it. They'd call me. The people call me because they say I'm the president. It's sort of sad. They don't want to deal with him. First of all, they don't get called. But when they do, they don't even want to talk to him. They won't even talk to him. And I get to know a lot of families and what they're going through. Their daughters were killed. Their sons were killed. The 13 that were killed in Afghanistan should have never happened. And it's amazing. I just get to know these people. They call me, and so many times they call me, and I have to take their call because it's they lost their daughter, they lost their son. It's so sad. It's so tragic what happened. These people coming over in droves, and they're really they're murders. We got 13,000 murders. We've got drug dealers at levels that nobody's ever seen. Who would take these? Who would take them? John, who would take these people? We have terrorists coming in, and they come in and they don't even examine them. They just let them walk through.
Well,
John, it's called an open border. And if they were in, you'd have 200 million people instead of 21 million people.
In Venezuela, Venezuela opened up their jails, and they sent everybody to us. A lot of them in New York.
Yeah. So could there be reparations from U.S. or somewhere else, Mr. President?
Well, listen, in Venezuela, they opened up their jails. They took, and it's, tough. They run it tough. They took all of their street gangs and they dumped them into
We have them in
the
New
United
York.
States.
We have them in New York, Mr. President.
And they're tougher than anybody we have. We don't have gangs that tough.
And the police department has to be able to deal with it, and they're not capable. It's going to take more to help New York than that. What can you do to help the inner cities that have become jungles?
Well, it would be great if we had the proper leadership, which we really don't. If you take a look at, Chicago, the various places, it's incredible. But we're going to help them, and we're going to have to strengthen up the police. The police are great. They're sitting back. They want to do their job. But if they do their job, they lose their pension. They lose everything, okay? Their house, their pension, their families, they lose everything. We're going to indemnify the police. We're going to let them do their job because they can do it. They want to do it. Like Border Patrol wants to do it. Border Patrol is standing there watching people come in that they're looking at. They can just smell it, that they're horrible criminals. They're coming in, they're criminals. Do you know that Venezuelan crime is down 72%? And the only reason it's not down further is because the ones that they haven't brought out yet, but they're bringing them all out. They won't have any criminals. Every one of them is going to be in this country. It's not conceivable, John. John, in business, we always know what the other side wants. We have to sort of It's not conceivable that people would have allowed this to happen to our country. These are bad people, and that's why she's getting crushed in the voting.
They're trying to change. They're trying to change the American way of life, and we're not going to allow it to happen. And I understand your people are yelling at Rita that the time is up, so I'm going to give it to Rita, but we can talk for another hour. But
absolutely. And Mr.
Rita, we can talk for a long time.
And Mr. President, before we let you go.
We have to act. John,
yes.
We can talk, but we have to act. This is serious. The people are coming in right now. They're being flown in by airplanes over the top. Can you believe that? 400,000 people came in by airplane. They were talking about the border airplane. We've got to act.
At least
this is not sustainable for any country.
Remember Bill Fugazi? At least we should know Ellis Island. At least we should know who's good and bad. We can't just let murderers and drug dealers in.
Yeah, absolutely.
You and I got the Ellis Island medals together, right?
Absolutely,
and it was
correct.
a great thing, and we had a spirit for the country. Today, they don't even talk about things like that. That was a beautiful thing you just mentioned. It was beautiful the way that was done. It was a great honor, and they don't talk about that anymore. Today, they just come in through the border, and they just come in. Anybody can come into our country.
Without checks and balances.
We're going to get them out, John. We're getting them out.
I'm there on your side. I'm there next to you, Mr. President.
Not sustainable.
Absolutely. We want to have a safe country. And before we let you go, Mr. President, Madison Square Garden coming up. How important, how special is that to you personally? We know how much you love New York, but what is that moment going to mean to you?
Well, it's New York, but it's also it's the end of my campaigning when you think. I mean, I've done it now for 9 years. We've had two great elections. One was better than the other. The second one was much better than the first. We got almost 12 million more votes than we got the first time, which is unheard of. That never happened for a president before, where you do better the second time by that kind of a number. Got more votes than any sitting president in history. But now this one blows it away. This one is better than the both of them. Maybe the both of them put together based on the numbers we're seeing, John. I think you see that. And, numbers are coming out of Georgia and Michigan. The numbers that are coming out of Michigan and Pennsylvania are incredible.
I'm praying for 49 states, Mr. President. We got to outdo.
Well, whatever it is. Look, you know what I want? I just want the victory. I want to have a victory. We can start stopping people from pouring into our country that are, that like shooting people and killing people and all the other things. It's insane what we've allowed to happen to our country.
It is insane.
Makes no sense.
Well, we are so grateful to you, Mr. President. We are watching closely and can't wait to see what happens on election night. And have a great, great rally there at Madison Square Garden. And good luck on election night. Yes, you will.
Yeah, and maybe at Madison Square Garden if you'd like. But it's going to be great. They sold it out in 3 hours. But
you sold more than Billy Joel.
Great.
Yes, exactly. Billy Joel's crying.
I know, that's right. That's right. We saw more than anybody. Anyway, I think it'll be a great time. And it's going to be really a celebration of the whole thing, because it's coming to an end a few days after that. The campaigning, I won't campaign anymore. Then I'll be campaigning to make America great. In other words, then I'll be calling guys like John, and I'll say, what do you think of this, John? I want to because John's a great businessman, and John's got great common sense. John can answer 99% of these questions better than anybody in government.
I agree.
And, I know the real John. You do too, probably, but not like I know him.
Thank you.
Oh,
thank you both.
What a blessing. We are with you. Good luck.
Have a great day. And most important, stay safe. We need you.
Yes, please stay safe.
The world needs you.
Thanks, John.
We love you, Mr. President. Thank you.
Good. Goodbye. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. President, again. And I really felt good talking to him today.
It was great just talking to him now. He sounds great.
We're going to have our entire crew here in the studio right after the break, and we're going to talk about it amongst ourselves. I think you got one commercial that pays the bills.
Yeah, we sure do. And by the way, this interview that you just heard was sponsored by Thor Metals Group, home of investment grade gold, the best performing asset of 2024. Call Thor at 844-944-THOR to protect your retirement with gold.
It's the top news of the day, sponsored by Goya. Here's Rita Cosby.
And of course, our big interview with President Trump is going to be making a lot of headlines to talk to him exclusively about a variety of topics. And also after the break, we're going to be talking about a whole bunch of it with Governor Patterson, Ed Cox, Judge Weinberg, and of course, me and John. And also the best show ever. We're going to have also former Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy, and also former National Security Advisor under President Trump, General Keith Kellogg. So you want to stay tuned to that. Also, South Korean officials are saying around 12,000 North Korean troops are being sent to Russia. This comes after the U.S. confirmed yesterday that the troops would be joining the war against Ukraine. And also, McDonald's is trying to restore confidence in any customers who may be turned away by the recent E. coli outbreak. The president of the fast food chain saying people can feel confident and go to McDonald's. And those are the big headlines. And we're going to be talking about our big exclusive with President Trump right after the break.
A common sense recap of the day's biggest stories. It's John Catsimatidis and Rita Cosby. Katz and Cosby on 77 WABC.
Well, that was after we finished paying the bills. We must have paid a lot of bills. I've never heard so many commercials.
They all want a piece of this,
guys,
of Katz and Cosby.
Let's go first to the GOP guy, Ed Cox. Any comments?
It was just great. I mean, he was smart the way he was handling the questions. There's humor, and he said he was talking to Border Control, and they said lifetime, and he said not longer. He was modest in many ways. He said, you're going to win 49 states, and he dodged that.
A real human being. A real human being.
He's a real human being.
He joked around when he had to joke, and he was a real human being.
Yeah.
Governor Patterson.
Well, I've spent time with the former president, and I agree. He is an incredible person to be around. I had a great time with him at the Al Smith dinner. And I don't come on here and usually, bash him the way other people do. But he laid out a bunch of issues and then didn't fill in the blank. So he said that 400,000 people came here by plane. I don't know where he got that from. He said he's winning in the polls in every state.
We should do the research. We should do the research.
Yeah, but he said he's winning in every state. I don't think you want to do the research on that one, John. In terms of his running the country, he didn't really say what he was going to do. He just said that everyone else is stupid and they're idiots and they don't know what they're doing. And I thought after a while that I thought both of you gave him time and both of you interviewed him very well. But I thought he missed an opportunity to really reach out to people and let them understand what it's going to be like as when he becomes president, then doing an infomercial that had, in my opinion, very little substantive material in it.
Judge Weinberg?
Well, Governor, I'm a little perplexed because did you happen to see the CNN interview of Kamala Harris? She's always on program. She's always on narrative. She doesn't have an original thought. She can't even get a sentence out without a word salad. So when you hear Donald Trump, he knows what he's talking about. What's the number one issue we have to worry about to protect the integrity of this country? Is it protecting the border, closing the border? The Harris-Biden administration opened the border. Millions of people came in who have no right to be here. They're undermining the integrity of this country. And he's told you what he's going to do about cleaning up the cities. He's going to back the police. He's going to support the police. So he's going to close the border. He's going to make sure that the police are backed. And he also told you...
Well, we do need law and order in our cities. I mean, all our big cities are a mess.
And he also told you, very importantly, respectfully, that the problem with the abandonment of Afghanistan is we left all that equipment behind, and that was not his decision. That was done by the military.
By the way, that was interesting about Milley, too. What he just shared with us, that it was Milley who said,
that's right.
Milley told him, leave the equipment behind, which was disastrous.
That's right, and he wouldn't do it that way, but Biden-Harris did.
Yeah, and he's got a track record, which is what's different. And she has a track record, which I put hers up against his any day of the week.
The Trump record to the Biden-Harris administration?
Absolutely.
Are you kidding?
You got to be kidding me.
He kept on message in a very nice way with respect to immigration and law and order, the two of the biggest issues that he has.
And you know what was also interesting, too, is he also talked about immigration. We want people here who come here legally, who want to do it correctly. Let's get the bad guys out. Let's get the bad people out who have committed crimes. And there are at historic levels right now that are in this country, even according to Biden and Harris's DHS.
Well, let me say something when we talk about this. I do know the president a long time, and he listens to me once in a while, not always like anybody else, but of the three big suggestions I made to him, he listened to two of them. The one that I said to him in Bridgehampton, Mr. President, stop talking about deporting 20 million people. It's not going to happen. And he looks at me and I said, let's deport all the criminals. Let's deport the drug addicts. Let's deport the drug addicts, the
murderers,
criminals,
the sex offenders.
The sex offenders. Deport them. And then We'll look at it again. And he shook his hand and says, yeah, John, you're right. And guess what? Ed Cox, you were at the economic dinner. What did he do?
He gave a great speech on the economy, stuck right on message, and what he
And he did say that he did support the criminals.
Yeah, sure.
And he made that clear today. And also he contrasted, I thought about last night too. He talked about the town hall. I saw the town hall. It was one of the most vacuous things I've ever seen. Even David Axelrod, who is with Obama, of course, longtime Obama right-hand guy, said her word salads are like over the top. I mean,
they call it word salad city. That's what CNN was. And CNN is used to carrying the water for the Biden-Harris people.
Look, this was a substantive interview, and there's no way she could have had an interview like this with all the modulation that he spoke with. It was really a superb interview.
And seamless topics,
The second one that I gave him a suggestion on, I said, look, let's not bash independents. Let's not bash Democrats. I am pro, because that's the way I am. I am pro common sense Democrats, and I am pro common sense independents. I think they're going to vote for you.
And today, listen, I think he
has been using the words common sense.
Yeah, he has. By the way, I noticed that today, John. He used that phrase also and was talking and attributing it to you, which was great, John. And also,
the only one he didn't listen to me on, I don't know.
What?
I'm not sure I'm going to tell.
All right, we'll have to
put it in your next book.
We're going to tickle John and get it out.
Look, it wasn't necessarily an easy interview.
I tickled easily.
You asked about a fascist. He's called a fascist, and he replied to that. He said they have no message. That's why they're doing it. And then he went through each of the people and said why they were saying that.
And it was important to hear that, because these are the headlines. These people are throwing these bombs out, and here he is. And it was a fair point. I thought John brought up a great point, too, is when you have people and you fire them because you're not happy with their service, guess what? Everybody's had someone you fired somebody, they're angry at you.
And yet he all did it in good humor.
Yes.
Are you kidding? Mitt Romney is still mad at him.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
And Chris Christie is still mad at him.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Because, you know something? He made him beg for the job, and he didn't give it to them.
Right. Well, and also he bashed him too, Drum. You remember, John, Romney flipped and flopped all over the place too.
Yeah.
And when you hear the story of what he said again about Milley and about Kelly, when you hear his side of the story, you understand why, for America, maybe you don't want to have these people around.
But I would have kept my mouth shut.
Yeah, you would have just said, good luck. Sorry, it doesn't work out. I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. Well,
have I ever said anything bad about Rudy Giuliani?
No.
Okay.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Absolutely. And you guys, we're going to take
He was a great mayor.
He was. He was a superb mayor. Are you kidding me?
He's going to go down in history as a great mayor.
Absolutely.
He will. He set this city straight.
Absolutely. And everybody, we're going to take a quick break now, because right after the break, we have none other than General Keith Kellogg. He knows a lot of these players that President Trump was talking about in the White House, and former national security advisor under President Trump. He's going to join us right after the break.
You're commuting home with Katz and Cosby. Now, here's John Catsimatidis and Rita Cosby on 77 WABC.
And we are back here on Katz and Cosby talking about our big exclusive, which you all heard with us here together with President Donald Trump, hoping to be the 47th president of the United States with the election, just right around the corner. And joining us now is General Keith Kellogg, National Security Advisor in the President Trump administration. General Kellogg, first of all, we're so honored to have you here today. I want to get your reaction to what you just heard from the president, along with all of us.
Yeah, John, Rita, thanks for having me. My first impression is, wow. That was a great interview. I mean, look by his voice, you see how relaxed he was. And he was very, very well aware of everything going around him. He had the names right. He had the places right. He had the discussion right. He was on the money. I was really pleasantly surprised how well that went. I just thought it was really great. And clearly the relationship, John, that you have with him is really something else. But, yeah, I would say it was great. And what he said, like the comments that are being made now, and I know you're going to pivot to that in a second with John Kelly and people like that. You know, those comments by Kelly were garbage. They really were. And I actually commented on that already. But I was pleasantly surprised when he made some comments, and the comment, because he actually brought out 5 generals to include SecDefs. When he talked about Milley, and he talked about Esper, and he talked about Kelly, and the rest of them, and how relaxed he was. But the thing was so good, and it was so important because it was important for America, was Afghanistan. He made a comment about Milley not wanting to bring the equipment out. The equipment was left behind. And, John, you mentioned that as well. He's absolutely right, because I was personally involved in those discussions with Milley. And what Trump did, a lot of people don't realize, he negotiated with the Taliban to allow us to move that equipment through Helmand province, through the bottom part of Afghanistan, into Pakistan, to the port of Karachi, where we could have gotten everything out. It would have taken a long time to do it, but we knew that. But Trump didn't want to leave anything. And Milley actually pushed back on that. And I said, nope, we're going to count bumper numbers. We're going to count it bumper by bumper by bumper to get him out of there. So he was right. So when people talk about leaving stuff behind, that was never his intent. It was a conditions-based agreement that he had with the Taliban, with Abdullah Baradar. And I was there. I heard it. I listened to it. I was in the Oval Office, and I was actually helping manage that as we get out of there. I just had to bring up that point because it was so interesting when he talked about it.
General Keith Kellogg, that's a really powerful point, because all of our jaws dropped when he said that. It's the first time I heard that it was sort of Milley's advice. Clearly, look, President Biden took that advice, and Kamala Harris, and look at what a catastrophe that was.
Oh, yeah, Rita, and I mean, there was a way to do it, but we had to get an agreement with the Taliban because they basically controlled Helmand province. And they said, yeah, we won't bother the convoys, and it's a 2-lane road. It's kind of, blacktop, but it was a way to get it through into Pakistan to the port of Karachi, and we were going to get it out of there, and that's how we were going to get stuff out. But the conditions-based agreement was always from day one. We were never going to leave Bagram Air Base, ever. We were going to maintain a residual force on the ground with over 3,500 service members and special operations forces as well, and until we had an agreement between the Ghani government and the Taliban. That's what I call a conditions-based agreement. They call that the Doha Agreement. And oh, by the way, you can go online and look at it. It's an unclassified document. So that thing just turned into a real disaster. We lost 13 great Americans at Abbey Gate during the withdrawal. So I was there. I saw it. The president's exactly right. I was really glad he brought it up because he's spot on.
Go ahead, Cox.
General, you know a lot of these people. It just how he talked about each one of these, Kelly, Esper, Mattis, and Milley, and explained just what they were and why he, where he disagreed with them. It was fascinating listening to him do that. He knows people and he knows them well.
Well, John, he made that comment to you about being a businessman, and sometimes you get rid of people. And look, a lot of these people, and Kelly was like that, and so was, unfortunately, at the end, Milley. They thought that they got electoral college votes. I used to remind people they didn't. The only people who got electoral college votes were Trump and Pence. And the rest of you are, we're, to use my term, we're Christmas help, all right? We can be let go at any time, when the president wants us to. And that happens in organizations. If you don't, I'm from the West, okay? And there's a term in the West that you use. You hear it. You ride for the brand. What I mean by that is once you sign on to the outfit and you work for the trail boss, and you ride for the brand of the organization. And when you don't ride for the brand, you leave it.
That's what the presidency's about. And if you sign up, you ride with the brand. That's a very good way of putting it.
And I do know the president a long time, and don't forget, he grew up in Queens, small borough in the outer boroughs, and he worked hard with his father in the construction industry. He dealt with all the unions. He dealt with all the tough guys. He knew how to survive. And then he went to Atlantic City again, dealt with all the tough guys there, dealt with all the, how do we say it nicely? All the characters in New Jersey, and and survived. Where he did go wrong is when he had a problem with his casinos, but nobody tells the real story. When those helicopters go down, his whole management team went down.
Yeah, well, John, and I thought how we pivoted to business leadership is exactly how we ran the presidency. It was, basically it was very transactional. You either performed or you didn't perform. And I used to always laugh about it. I used to call it Trump time. And back in the day when I played football, it was called Lombardi time. I had Vince Lombardi, the great coach of the Green Bay Packers. And it was always, you always do things immediately. When you'd say, I need you to get this done, we'd go, okay. And then 5 minutes later, say, have you done it yet? I said, I haven't even left the office yet. But that was the way he was. And people good people respond to that because they know where his heart was, and his heart was always with Americans. He wanted America to do well, and that was his whole goal. And everybody should have been in full support. Some of them weren't. Those people left.
Yeah.
Fortunately, John, I can actually say I made it all through 4 years with him, which I was very proud to say to that.
Well, well-deserved, everybody. We are talking to General
so
Keith
did
Kellogg.
Larry Kudlow, and he made it through 4 years. And also, who was the guy that went away? He was on a show with us.
Sean Spicer, are you talking about?
No,
or who are you
Sean
talking about?
Spicer.
No, he left.
No,
but I'm trying to think of who.
Mike Pompeo.
Mike Pompeo,
there were a
4
couple.
years,
Yeah.
a very, very
Mike Pompeo made it.
a very
Bob
decent
O'Brien.
individual.
They kept really
Very
good
decent
ones.
individual.
Yeah.
Really good
Good
ones.
people.
Everybody, we are talking to General Keith Kellogg, who is in the National Security Administration with President Trump. Judge Weinberg.
General, good to talk to you again, sir. I'll tell you what I found very offensive was the remarks by Kamala Harris calling President Trump a fascist. You know, that name calling, which doesn't deal with the excellent record that he conducted himself on. He kept the country safe. He kept the economy strong. He was not a fascist. He was a tough executive. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, Judge, here's the thing, and you all know him because he's from New York, but I remind her when she did that comment about being Hitler and he listened to Hitler's generals, I said, okay, just step back for a second. Jared Kushner's son-in-law is Jewish. Ivanka, his daughter, has converted to Judaism. His 3 grandchildren are the Jewish faith. Really? He moved the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, which was a very symbolic act when he did that, and we were told there'd be a third intifada. It wasn't. For people to make comments like that, there's a lot of words you can use, and they're not designed for a family program. But you look at it and you go, man, I cannot believe you'd say that, and it's just so shallow when people make comments like that, and Harris is like that. And I can actually say this on a Twitter account or X, what do you want to call it. I said her comments yesterday just proved to me that Vice President Kamala Harris is a fraud. It's a harsh statement, yes. It's a partisan statement, yes, but it's a true statement. And she doesn't have depth at all, and you can see that. And anybody who's reasonable can actually see that she cannot answer the question. Because bottom line, she's not a student. What I mean by a student, when you become the president or vice president or senior official, you have to study virtually every day. Like you're in a PhD program every minute of every day when you're in the presidency or senior position, because you have to be smart. You have to be up on all the programs. You have to study the programs. You have to study what's going on. And you have to have the agility, the mental agility to make pivots all the time. Trump did that. I made a comment. I think he probably got bad one time when I said, Mr. President, you're a learning president. He goes, huh? I said, there's a series of books out called the Dummies books, Math for Dummies, whatever, Engineering for Dummies.
Right. It's a series. Yep.
It's all, you just have to learn it on the go. And man, he did it every day. You could see him say, wow, it was so much. It was actually fun to watch how we would get that. And the rest of us, we all were with him. We were all learning at the same time. But that's what makes good administrations. And the fact of the matter is, we weren't afraid of learning or seeing what's going on. I don't think Harris has done that. I think she spent 4 years, 3.5 years, almost 4 now, in the White House, and she hasn't learned a thing because she never took the time to study what she was doing and what was going on. And that's a huge mistake. You know that from business. You know that from law. You know that from anything. You have to stay abreast of the situation, what's actually happened, and learn as you go along. She hasn't done that. Trump did.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that is really, really powerful. Let's. I believe we have a guest coming in like 2 seconds here, but very quickly, final thoughts on President Trump and how he will keep America safe, real quick.
Well, I think what he's going to do is he's going to bring in an incredibly good team. And he's admitted he made some mistakes, but he's going to have a good team come in, and then he's going to make that truism of America first, because it's going to count for what's good for American is always going to be good for America. It's good for American citizens. It's going to be good for America. And he's got that. He knows where he's at. He knows his place in history.
Yep.
And he's going to be a historical figure because he'll be the only other person besides Grover Cleveland to serve 2 terms with a break between them. And the fact is, he knows what legacy is going to look like, and he'll accomplish it.
Well, let's keep, General, let's keep the free world free.
Yeah. You got that right.
Thank you, General. Great to have you here. Thank you so much on such an important day. General Keith Kellogg, thank you. We love you, Keith. Thank you. And joining us now here on Cats and Cosby, we have the former Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy. Mr. Speaker, we just had that blockbuster exclusive interview with President Trump talking about a myriad of topics. Your thoughts as we're heading into the day, and any thoughts on the interview, too?
I think it's just excellent. It just shows how great your show is. You get the number one person in the world at the most critical time to be on your show taking questions. What's ironic is his opponent, a city council member, would take more press questions than Kamala Harris has taken. But it shows the difference. You know, he is prepared on the very first day to start turning this country back around, securing the border, bringing down inflation, making things affordable again, making our energy policy. And I will tell you, if you look around the world, there'll be stability. The Middle East will calm down. Things will change when President Trump becomes president again. In the campaign, if you want to see how well it's going, the Democrat Senate incumbents in Wisconsin and Pennsylvania have President Trump in their ads, not to attack him, but to try to hug him. What a difference that makes.
Yeah, that's amazing. You know, one of the things that struck me hearing from President Trump just a few moments ago, Mr. Speaker, was just the clarity and also the contrast of what it will be like if he gets back into the White House. We've seen what he did before. And then he painted a picture for me and John, as you probably heard, where he talked about it will be catastrophic, the border. I mean, look at what a mess it is now. Imagine what it will be like if it is, 4 years of Kamala Harris and Tim Walz.
If you have 13,000 murderers come over the border because some bureaucrat or some political appointee told the Border Patrol, let them in. After all, it's their boss. I mean, how can they do that? I mean, I said the words treason because to me, if I was president, if one of political appointees told and made the Border Patrol allow murderers in to kill other Americans, that is treason.
It's 100%. And think about this. The only reason they'll do something about it right now is the pressure of the campaign. The minute the election's over, they'll go right back to what destroying America they had done the whole time. And let me ask you this. After Kamala Harris has spent $1 billion, can anybody in America tell me the three things she's going to do? The only thing I know is she's going to bring inflation back to homes by giving people $25,000. So she's going to make even homes unaffordable again. I mean, what is she going to do? She doesn't know because she says she'll do exactly the same thing President Biden has done. She couldn't think of one thing different. So it's more of the same, more murders coming across the border, more inflation, more uncertainty around the world where America is abandoning our embassies, abandoning our bases, giving them to Russia. We've got to stop that and be strong again, and President Trump knows how to do it.
Ed Cox?
Mr. Speaker, and when you don't have any good argument, what you do is you attack the other person personally. He's a fascist, and that's the only argument that she has. By the way, Jimmy Carter did the same thing to Ronald Reagan as Reagan was going to a 44-state victory in 1980, was just going after him personally because there was no real substantive argument to be made.
Look, if this is called jumping the shark, they have nothing else to say. They're desperate. And what does that mean if you really believe President Trump is a fascist, right? Or President Trump is Hitler? Would you turn over government to him when he wins? I mean, what are you trying to do here? Incite? When you had 2 assassination attempts already on his life, what are you telling the American people? Is that a dog whistle?
I didn't want to say that.
That's not something that should be said.
But, Mr. Speaker, the Iranians are going to lose $300 billion if Trump becomes president. You think they're not going to try something?
Exactly.
The border, the Mexican
the
cartels are going to lose billions and billions and billions. Don't you think they're going to try something? I think President Trump, the Secret Service, has to do double duty to make sure he stays safe.
Yes, and they got to make sure they have the resources because that's determined by the current president to be providing protection for President Trump.
Yeah, no question. No question. Final thoughts, Mr. Speaker. We have about 45 seconds or so left. Final thoughts of where this is headed.
Otherwise,
to
Mark
day.
Levin is going to be yelling at us.
Yeah, we don't want to have that.
No, not the great one. I will tell you this. What a fabulous interview you had. You guys are doing a tremendous job. And for everybody in listening, get out and vote. This is a tight race. Don't just think it's coming one way or another. We've got to save our country. Your vote matters, and do your part. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. How great.
And guys, this is America. We want to keep it America, and we want to keep it America the way we grew up.
Yeah, and safe for everybody.
And safe for everybody.
Yeah, that's the priority. Wow.
What do we stand for?
Truth, justice, and the American way.
God bless America.